Children learn if they live in an orderly world by looking at their mother. If their mother seems to be in control and on top of things and calm and in charge, making decisions, they believe, this is an orderly world. If their mother is harassed and nervous and upset and angry and gets upset about little things that happen and so on, they believe that they live in a disorderly world, and they are insecure, and they have to be like that. So as adults, they will be insecure. I had this woman come up to me, and she said she worries all the time. She worries for ridiculous reasons. I said, your mother was a worrier, wasn't she? She said, how do you know that? I said, like mother, like daughter. If your mother was a worrier, she taught you to worry at her knee. Now, little girl, this is how you worry when you grow up, okay? You take completely absurd things, you catastrophize, you blow them completely out of proportion, and you think about them all the time, okay? And, okay, mommy. And so they grow up, and as adults, they worry all the time. You sound like a genius. How did you know that about my father? How did you know that about your mother? I had this guy comes up to me and he said, I've never had any confidence. I said, your father was really a bastard, wasn't he? He was always criticized. How did you know that? Well, because if you're a male and you have no confidence, almost invariably it was your father criticized you all the time. And as a result, you never had any confidence to try anything. How did you know that? Well, because the stuff we're talking about is so important, and yet it's so simple. So we say they learn by moving from discomfort toward comfort. Sigmund Freud's great breakthrough was the pleasure-pain principle, is that people move from pain to pleasure. So they move from discomfort toward comfort. And that is the child's primary motivation. When children are young, they're totally emotional, and they always are moving away from lack of love toward love. They work away from fear and criticism toward love and acceptance. And they're automatic. They're just simply moving all the time from discomfort toward comfort. We as adults, by the way, move from discomfort toward comfort all the time. It is our primary motivation. We are seeking pleasure and moving away from pain. One of the pleasures, the 7 ingredients of success, one of the pleasures is peace of mind, another is financial independence, another is loving relationships. And we always move to compensate for the deficiency that we feel that we are experiencing now. So if we feel that we don't have enough money, that becomes our preoccupation to get enough money. If we don't feel that we have enough love and security in our relationships, that becomes our preoccupation. So very early in life, children begin to develop negative habit patterns which have their roots in destructive criticism. Now, where do these negative habit patterns come from? The first one they come from is destructive criticism. It's used by parents to direct and control their children. Now, destructive criticism happens when the child is told, don't, get away from there, stop that. How many times have I told you, whack, slap, punishment? And the child has no understanding that playing with knives is dangerous. They don't understand what's going on. They only know that if I try something new, Mommy and Daddy get really mad at me, and they shout at me, and they hit me. So if I try something new, I'm in danger. So I've got to avoid doing anything new. I've got to avoid touching, tasting, feeling things. I can't. And they develop this feeling of I can't. And this feeling of I can't eventually moves, as we say, becomes the inhibitive negative habit pattern. We feel inhibited from trying to do things. We feel inhibited. We feel incompetent, incapable. I'm too small. I can't. And in adult life, this manifests itself. This pattern triggers the response of I can't, which creates the fear of failure. And the fear of failure is the greatest single obstacle to success in adult life. It's not that we cannot do extraordinary things with our lives. It's just that we have such fears, and the fears are irrational. They're not based on anything. They're based on childhood experiences. General MacArthur once said, there is no security in life, there is only opportunity. But unfortunately, the bottom 80% of the population are preoccupied with security. And even into the top 20%, and they think about security all the time, and they're traumatized about taking risks. Here's an interesting discovery about the fear of failure. I can't. And that is that the fear of failure is expressed in the body. And if you take the human body and you turn it sideways, so here's the body, here's the head, okay? And then you divide the human body in half, this way, that is laterally, and you get the front of the body and the back of the body. Well, the fear of failure is manifested on the front of the body. It's manifested first in the solar plexus. Your solar plexus chokes up when you have a fear-induced thought or event. And then it'll dry out your throat. And it'll often cause you to have headaches. And it will often cause your bladder to run, and you have to run and go to the bathroom. Sometimes it'll cause you phlebitis and things. It'll cause you stomach pains. It'll cause your heart to pound faster. And these are all manifestations of the fear of failure. Sometimes I would use an example of this by saying, now, the biggest single fear in America, ahead of the fear of death, is the fear of public speaking. Standing up in front of an audience and speaking. And so in order to help you overcome that fear, now this is an exercise. Beep, this is just an exercise. Beep, this is just an exercise, all right? In order for you to overcome your fear, I'm going to pick one person from this audience, and I'm going to bring you up here to speak later on in the day. And I'm not going to tell you who it is, but you'll be invited up here to speak for 5 minutes later on in the day. So I just want you to think of, if it's you, what you will say in that 5 minutes. Now, how many people felt their solar plexus go just like that? Isn't that interesting? I told you, bleep, this is just an exercise. This is a drill. This is not true. But the very idea of being called up to speak spontaneously in front of a group caused your solar plexus go. This is a manifestation of the fear of failure. Imagine what happens when you're given a business opportunity or an opportunity for a new job or a new promotion or even setting a new goal and committing yourself to embarking on a new course of action, to paying money to do something that you haven't done before, to learn a new subject. You would choke up all the way here. Pretty soon you can find yourself tossing and turning at night. What if I said I'm going to call you up tomorrow? You don't know who it is, but I'm going to be one of you, and I look at you like this and I give you a big smile, so you think, oh my God, he's looking right at me. It's going to be me. Do you know what would happen? You'd be tossing and turning all night, thinking, oh my God, what if it's me? What if it's me? Well, you see how irrational it is? I've told you I've told you this is an exercise. It's only a drill, but even the thought of it would cause you probably to be awake at night. So this is where you experience the fear of failure. I just write FOF. I used to write follow up and close. When I would say, now, the third part of selling is follow up and close, or write FU and close. And I realized it didn't look too good on paper. Anyway, so we say the next habit pattern is the compulsive negative habit pattern. This pattern develops when children receive conditional love. Let us even say when children are the victims of conditional love. This is love that is not given unconditionally. It's given, taken away, given, taken away, given, taken away. Children respond with, I have to please other people. And so instead of saying, I don't have to, I can do anything I want, is children start saying, I have to. If I don't do this, children's parents say, if you don't, you're going to get it. You better do this or else. If you don't do that, you're in big trouble. And so children who are traumatized about losing the love and security of their parents start thinking, I have to do what mommy and daddy want. I have to do what they want, or they'll get mad at me. They won't love me. I won't be safe. I'll be in great danger. And so what they do is they start saying, I have to. I have to do what mommy says. I have to go now. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to, I have to, I have to. Children who have been the victims of conditional love grow up with what is called hypersensitivity. And as adults, they are hypersensitive to the opinions of other people. Is they can't do anything without getting the approval of others. They've got to ask other people. What if somebody disapproves? What if they don't like me? What if they're mad at me? And so they are actually like a deer caught in the headlights. When it comes to anything new or different, they're paralyzed. In selling, for example, the most important quality in selling or in entrepreneurial business is the quality of boldness. It is the quality of actually getting out there, Brett, you know what I'm talking about, and doing it, right? Instead of talking about it and planning for it. And the fear of rejection, the fear of criticism, the fear that other people may disapprove is so traumatizing that it causes people to paralyze and not try anything new or different. So, the compulsive negative habit pattern creates the fear of rejection and also the fear of criticism. This fear of rejection is experienced by adults as type A behavior. Now, there are many people here who have what is characterized as type A behavior. I'll talk about this in greater length tomorrow. But type A behavior is an obsessive desire to earn the approval of the boss. We can never earn enough approval from the boss. I've had people working for me who could have the best year in history, be #1 in the history of the company, and on January 1st, they feel that they're starting all over again. They feel that they have no success, no approval, and they're always scrambling. And what happens with type A behavior is you are trying to perform to what is called an undetermined high standard. In other words, you never know. You can never get there. You can never reach the point where you can relax because you never did get the unconditional love that you needed, and you can never get it from your boss. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. So we say that if you repeat over and over again, I like myself, your self-esteem increases and your fears will diminish. Now this is one of the great breakthrough thoughts. If you can imagine that everybody has high levels of fears as a result of childhood experiences, and your mind can only hold one thought at a time, imagine your emotions like a teeter-totter is as your self-esteem goes up, your fears go down. And the more you like yourself, the less you fear failure. The more you like yourself, the less you fear rejection. The more you like yourself, the more you realize that if you do fail, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It means you tried something that didn't work out. One of the things we say is, remember, there's no such thing as failure, there's only feedback. And there's no such thing as failure, there's only feedback. And obstacles come not to obstruct, but to instruct. Obstacles come not to obstruct, but to instruct. That's the attitude of the self-actualizing person. And in another attitude of self-actualizing persons is that they are concerned with the thoughts and feelings of others, but not overly concerned. Is they please at least themselves in all things. In other words, they say, you disapprove of me, or you reject me, or criticize me when I call on you. Well, you have a nice day, because it doesn't bother me at all. And they just go on because they know that being rejected is not personal. When people are not supportive of you, it's not personal, it's their problem, it's not your problem. Laura Huxley wrote many years ago a book, and you don't need to read the book, you just need to have the title, and the title was, You Are Not the Target. And what it basically says is you're not the target. If people are hostile towards you, or aggressive, or unsupportive, or negative in business for any reason, it's not personal, it's their problem, it's not your problem. So what you do is you say, well, you have a nice day. And you just let it roll off your back. And the more you say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. I encourage people when they get up in the morning to say, I like myself, I love my work. I like myself, I love my work, I like myself, I love my work. You can't say it 3 to 5 times without starting to smile. You can't even listen to me say it without smiling inside. It just makes you happy. And of course you teach your kids to say, I like myself, I like myself. And you get them to look in the mirror and say, I like myself. And you tell your kids what wonderful people they are, and they just walk away feeling that the most important people in their life think that they are wonderful people, and they develop positive levels of self-esteem, positive self-image, positive self-concept. They see themselves, and they set really high standards for themselves in terms of realizing their ideal. So it's really important. So the more you say, I like myself, the less you fear. And if you say it over and over again, eventually you drive it down into your subconscious mind until it becomes locked in and permanent. Eventually, you reach the point where you become absolutely fearless. You become absolutely unstoppable. And you do it by pushing down this message, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I love myself, I love myself. And we'll talk more about this later. Now, come to lesson number 4. All right? Before I do that, why don't we just do this one exercise? What one action are you going to take immediately as a result of what you've just learned in this session? Please write down your answer to that question on page 22. What one action are you going to take? Or what one thing are you going to do differently? And you can just write, I'm going to say I like myself 100 times a day. Now, if you're going to say I like myself, I do not suggest that you do it in public washrooms or in crowded elevators. But prior to every sales call, say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. Prior to every phone call, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. And your confidence goes up and your fears drop. And remember, self-esteem is the foundation of self-confidence, and self-confidence is the critical determinant of success in public life. Interesting study recently, self-confidence is also the foundation of sex appeal. Did you know that? A person with high levels of self-confidence is considered to be sexy by members of the opposite sex. For some reason, they're attracted to it for whatever it happens to be. Let me give you an example. We were at the Grammy Awards a couple of months ago in Los Angeles. Incredible experience. And Mick Jagger was singing. Mick Jagger is one of the ugliest people that you can imagine. He looks like he's been beat with an ugly stick, you know, without stopping. And yet he has so much self-confidence that literally women crawl over broken glass and line up around the block to service him. I mean, it's an unbelievable thing. Yeah. No, it's an unbelievable thing because he's got so much self-confidence. It connects with some animal part of our nature. And the higher your level of self-esteem is, the more attractive you are, not only to members of the opposite sex, but the more attractive you are to other people. You know, the President of the United States, Mr. Obama, is called No Drama Obama because he seems to be so confident and completely in charge and in control of himself all the time. And people run to the voting booths and vote for him because he seems to be so confident. Why? And so we're not even going to talk about politics, but the person who has the greatest level of confidence exudes that confidence and it affects everybody around them. Everybody wants to be working with and for and around people who have self-confidence, and the more you like yourself, the higher is your self-confidence. So let's go on to lesson 4, your subconscious powerhouse. The conscious mind has 3 specific features. And if you take your conscious mind, we say, first of all, it is objective. In other words, it's objective, it's skeptical, it's unemotional. It is rational. It counts facts and figures, and it is discriminating. It chooses between what is better, what is worse, what is higher, what is lower, what is prettier, what is not as pretty. Now, the second one, I want you to change your word. In your workbook, it says, does it say the conscious or the subconscious? It says, does it say the subconscious? Please cancel out the sub. This was a misprint. When I saw this, I had a heart attack. This is the conscious mind. The conscious mind has 4 functions. The first function is to identify incoming data. Let's say, for example, you're walking across the street and you hear the roar of an engine. And you immediately identify that it's a truck and it's driving down the street toward you. The second thing you do, you say, okay, roar of engine is moving truck. Is you compare it with previous experiences. You look at it and you say, how fast is it going? Well, it's driving 30 miles an hour and it's a block away, it's not a problem. If it's driving 60 miles an hour and it's 60 feet away, knowing how fast a truck will cross that, then it's a problem. You compare it with your other experiences with moving vehicles. Third thing you do is you analyze the current situation. Here you are in the street. Should you jump forward or jump back? And then number 4 is you decide what action to take. If the action is jump back, then you'll find that you'll do it instantaneously. So you've all had that experience where you have a situation and you immediately analyze, compare, you identify, compare, analyze, and decide, boom, and take action immediately. You have this all the time. You have it with ordering coffee and so on. So this is the function of the conscious mind. The subconscious mind actually works, and if you take a look at the graph, I went past this, let me go back. All right. Back to the compulsive negative habit pattern. The compulsive negative habit pattern, the feeling of I have to, is manifested all along the back. First of all, it's manifested in stiffness in the back. Almost all of chiropractic is aimed at adjusting your back because it's stiff and sore. The muscles become so tight because you feel under the gun, you're behind on an assignment, you're behind on a report, you've got to get something done, I have to, this pressure to perform, and the muscles start pulling, actually pulling the spine. Their muscles become so tight, they'll pull the spine out of alignment, and you'll have to go back to the chiropractor. But if the pressure is still there, you'll have to keep going back to the chiropractor. As soon as you complete the task, all the pressure goes, and the pain disappears. And so you'll feel it in the lower back, you feel it in the neck. I've got a stiff neck. You'll get stabbing pains in the back of your brain because the pressure will actually close the blood vessels and you start to have headaches. You'll get constipation. You'll get phlebitis in the legs, which can often kill you. And all of these are manifestations of the compulsive negative habit pattern. One of the things which we'll teach later, which I'll mention now, is that you can often relieve most of these problems by completing a major task. Procrastination causes you to feel this pressure of I have to, but I'm not doing it. And the worst of all is I have to, but I can't. I can't, but I have to. I have to, but I can't. And this is the source of most psychosomatic illnesses in America, this one or both in combination, is you've got this pressure to perform or this fear of failure, and you're stuck between the two. I have to, but I can't. I have to, but I can't. So that's a very important thing for you to know. And as soon as you start working towards your goal, by the way, as soon as you take the first step towards your goal, the fear of failure disappears. As soon as you complete a major task, the fear of rejection disappears. At least the psychosomatic strains involved disappear. which bring us to the relationship between the conscious and the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is very small. Let's say this is the one, it's like a golf ball on top of a basketball. The conscious mind works with tremendous speed. The subconscious mind, according to Ouspensky, works about 30,000 times faster. The subconscious mind works instantaneously. The conscious mind deliberates and reflects and reads and thinks and takes notes and analyzes and so on. The subconscious mind works instantaneously. One of the examples they used is that if you were to take a glass of whiskey, all right, and you were to take it to a chemical lab, and you were to break it down and to steam it and break it apart and analyze it in a microscope, that could take you 8 hours. If you took a shot of whiskey, you would feel the effect of that whiskey almost instantaneously. In terms of the 8 hours in the lab, it would be 1 second in the subconscious to completely analyze that whiskey. Sometimes you'll meet a person, by the way, and you'll have an instant feeling about them. Spontaneous resonance, that sympathetic resonance, and it'll be based on your entire lifetime of experience, will instantaneously give you a feeling or impression about that other person. Your subconscious mind works 30,000 times faster than the conscious mind. That's why it works beyond thought. When you have a subconscious impulse, it'll come so instantaneous it's almost impossible to stop it, at least initially. We'll talk about this as we go. So this is the subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is like a massive data bank. It stores and retrieves data. It contains every single piece of information that you've ever taken in your entire life. It stores it away, and it stores it away neatly. And that's why sometimes you can recall something that you read 5 or 10 years ago. It'll just pop into your mind. Sometimes it'll be a factoid. Now, the recall is perfect. The memory is poor. The recall is there. That's why people who are under hypnosis can often remember things when they were 3 years old when they're 50. They can remember words that were said, what their mother was wearing, the bedroom they were growing up in. They can remember things that happened decades ago because it's all stored permanently. Just as the recall, the memory is good, but the recall sucks. Now, one of the roles of the subconscious mind is to store and retrieve data. You put the data away and to bring it back, and the conscious mind commands, and the subconscious mind obeys. The conscious mind commands, the subconscious obeys. Joseph Murphy wrote about the power of your subconscious mind. Well, he didn't really understand, because you'll learn tomorrow about the superconscious. The subconscious mind is a massive data bank that is like clay. You write on it with your thoughts. It has no thoughts of its own. Its job is simply to do, it's the gardener. The subconscious mind is the garden. It simply follows your commands. Whatever you tell it to do, it does, and it does it unquestioningly, and it does it without deviation or hesitation. So we say that either flowers or weeds will grow. If you plant flowers in your subconscious mind with your conscious mind, then flowers will grow. But if you don't plant flowers in your garden, what will grow anyway? Weeds will grow anyway. This is the great reason for failure in adult life. People say, well, I never meant to do this. No, but you didn't do the alternative. You didn't plant very positive, clear, constructive thoughts that you worked on all the time, and keep the weeds out. Keep the negative thoughts out. Because if you don't have very clear, positive goals that you're working on all the time, what happens is the weeds will grow. And the weeds are the fears and the doubts and the anxieties and the tensions and the frustrations and the negativity and the anger and all those things that preoccupy us. We say that you could take your mind like this, is that, and this is positive, this is negative, this is you, and it's hard to keep your mind positive. You have to work on it all the time, but the automatic default setting of your brain is negative. So if you're not consciously thinking a positive, creative thought, you automatically default to a worry or a problem. In fact, while I'm talking to you today, every so often, you'll have a couple of seconds and you think of a money problem, a relationship problem, a health problem, a family problem, a business problem. Your mind just keeps defaulting back to your problem. You can't stop it until it becomes a habit for you most of the time to think about the things that you want, which is where we are going. All right, so either flowers or weeds will grow. So we say that the key role of the subconscious mind is to keep your behavior consistent with your previous behaviors. So whatever you have done in the past, your subconscious mind keeps you consistent with that behavior. This is called the comfort zone. If you've earned a certain amount in the past and you earn too much, your subconscious mind will give you all kinds of ideas to get rid of the money. If you're earning too little, your subconscious mind will give you all kinds of ideas and goadings to earn more. The law of subconscious activity says that the subconscious makes all of your words and actions fit a pattern consistent with your self-concept. So, for example, I am a professional speaker. When I am speaking to a small or large group, I feel completely confident, probably because I've done several hundred hours of research and preparation. So I feel very confident. Also, I've done it 5,000 times and had positive responses. So therefore, when I stand up, my subconscious mind says, oh, I've been here before, and you're completely confident. Interesting point, by the way, is your subconscious activity, your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a real experience and one that you vividly imagine. You've heard this repeated over and over again. So let us say that you have a success experience. You're in business and you have a success experience with a client or a customer. And you're happy, makes you happy. Well, the subconscious mind records that as one success experience. You just won one contest. Every time you think about that success experience, you turn it over, you bask in it, you reflect on it, and you replay it. Like a replay, your subconscious mind, which can't tell the difference between something that's real or imagined, registers that as a new success experience. And each time you think about it again, your subconscious mind registers as a new success experience. So you can actually transform your thinking by taking one successful event, real or imagined, and just replaying it in your mind, just thinking about it in your mind. And each time you think about it, the subconscious mind says, there he goes again, he's successful again, there she goes again, she just had another success. Imagine you've had 50 successes in a row. What kind of confidence will your subconscious mind be giving you when you go into the next event? You'll be brimming with confidence and self-esteem, and your self-image will be positive. Your whole body language and stature will be different if you just won 50 times in a row. Are you with me so far? And you can do that just simply by replaying your success experience. Now, what if you haven't had a success experience? Create one. Say, if I was really successful, this is what would happen. And just imagine. It's called directing the movies of your mind. So what you do is you direct your own mental movie. You're the star, you write the script, you run the plot, you shoot the cameras, and you create a clear mental picture of exactly the way it would work out if it was perfect. And your subconscious mind accepts it as not only as an experience, but as a command. This is how you want these experiences to turn out. And then your subconscious mind will do everything possible to make sure that you have those experiences again. Very powerful, and it's so powerful, and it operates so quickly that once you're pre-programmed for success, you'll have just success after success after success. So we say the law of concentration, one of the great mental laws, you're going to learn about 27 mental laws in this course, is that whatever you dwell upon grows. Whatever you dwell upon grows. Whatever you think about more and more grows. And the reason this happens is, if you can imagine a computer, okay, you just take this, and let's say this is your computer, and this is all of your operating space on your disk, and here's your goal, and you think about it, and your computer gives you a certain amount of operating space, but you think about it more, and your computer assigns more and more of its capacity, your subconscious computer, to this goal. And that's why you'll find, as Peter Drucker said, whenever you find something getting done, you find a monomaniac with a mission. One of the most important success principles is that of commitment, is people are 100% totally committed to the achievement of a goal, whatever it happens to be. And as a result, more and more of their mental capacity is assigned to help you to achieve the goal. The more you dwell upon it, the more you think about it, the more of your mind, the more of your emotions are taken over by it, until you reach the point you can't think of anything else. And all those incredible mental resources that you have stored away, and all the ones that you can attract, become available to you. Who are unsuccessful people? Is they think of 10 or 20 or 50 things at once, and half of them contradict the rest. And if they got this, they couldn't get that, and they want to play golf, and they want to have lots of money, and they want to be thin, but they want to eat cheesecake. And so you have a positive thought and a negative thought, and they just keep canceling each other, and not a darn thing happens. But successful people are really, really clear about what it is they really want. And what they do is they think about it all the time, and the more they think about it, the more ideas they have, the more positive they become. Thinking about a goal, by the way, that you want to achieve makes you happy. It raises your self-confidence. Thinking about a big goal actually improves your self-image and raises your self-esteem. Because when you're thinking about a big goal, you like yourself more. And when you're thinking about a big goal, you think, I'm the kind of person who has big goals. Here's a little exercise, and I've given this many times, and it's just kind of revolutionary. I say to people, decide today to be in the top 10% in your field in terms of being absolutely excellent at what you do, and also in terms of being one of the top 10% of money earners in your field. Make a decision today and write it down and set it as a goal and make a plan and just work on it until you get there. Realize that everybody's in the top 10%, started in the bottom 10%, and nobody's smarter than you and nobody's better than you, so you can be in the top 10% as well if you decide to be, and if you just keep working at it until you achieve it. Well, people think about that and they think, that's a neat idea. If I was in the top 10%, boy, that'd sure solve a lot of my problems. I'd make more money, I'd move up faster in my career, I would be more respected and esteemed, I'd have greater pride and self-confidence. Wow, that's a great goal. And before you even move from the table, you already like yourself more. Your self-image is better. You're a different person because you have decided, I'm going to be in the top 10%. Even though you have not raised a finger to be in the top 10%, you've decided that you're going to be. That's why making a decision to do or be something different has an extraordinary effect on your life. Making a decision to get in or get out, to do it or not do it, has a tremendous effect on your life because now suddenly all of your best mental resources go to work for you. So whatever you dwell upon grows. Now the law of substitution, and this is one of the great laws, says that you can replace one thought with another. Remember we said you could only think one thought at a time, in this case positive or negative. If you're thinking a negative thought, just like a bump car, you can bump it out and replace it with a positive thought. And if you keep replacing it with a positive thought, pretty soon the positive thought just stays. It takes root. And pretty soon, by dwelling on a positive thought, you're thinking about a positive thing, something that makes you happy all the time. You wake up in the morning, you think about your goal. You wake up in the morning, you think about what you want and how to get it. And you stop thinking negative thoughts. If you have a negative thought during the day, switch and say, wait a minute, think about something that you like. Now the two great motivations are fear versus desire. As you dwell on your desires, your fears diminish. When you think about what you want, you think about how to get it, you think about the things you could do, and you think about what a difference it would make in your life, then what happens is your fears begin to diminish, and you like yourself more, and you feel more confident. So those are powerful laws. So what is the key to unlocking your mental powers? Begin by taking purposeful, systematic control over the content of your conscious mind. Think and talk about only the things you want. Repeat over and over to yourself, I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. I have to tell you a quick story, and then we'll take another 5-minute break. We're getting right back on track here. I was in Atlanta, and this gentleman came up to me, and he was about 35, 36, I would guess. Nice guy, fit, obviously working out, healthy, probably used Shalene's programs on a regular basis. And he came up to me, and it was at the break, and he was very emotional. And he said, Mr. Tracy, I said, I just got to thank you. You changed my life. I said, I want to thank, and he was kind of having trouble getting out. But this is a stand-up guy. I mean, he's a really, you could see, he's a very strong, very confident guy, but he was choking up a bit. And I said, I just put my arm around him. I said, tell me what happened. He said, well, about 12 years ago, he said, you were speaking here, and I was just starting off. I was in my early 20s. I didn't have any money, and I was driving an old car, and I wasn't doing well at sales. And I came to your seminar. Somebody came and sold your seminar. And in that seminar, you gave us an exercise to do. And you said, write down 101 goals that you'd like to achieve in your lifetime. And I'd never heard that idea. I said, it may take a long time. As a matter of fact, after you start writing goals, you'll run out of goals after 5 or 10. So get yourself the newspaper, get yourself some magazines, even go through the yellow pages, and just go through and just write down everything you want. House, home, car, travel, vacations, jewelry, stereo, computers, carpets, cars, boats, just write it down. So he sat down, he said, I followed your advice. Probably the one person in the audience who did. Went home that night and he got a spiral notebook and he began writing down goals until he had 101 goals. And he wrote them down, and for the next few weeks he read through the goals. Every weekend he'd read through those goals and he'd think about those goals and he'd think, wow, if I could have this, double his income, get a new car, have his own home. He wanted to meet the woman of his dreams. He wanted to have a lovely home. He wanted to have children. He wanted to be able to provide well for his children, put them in private schools. He wanted to be able to do all these things for his wife. And he wrote it down, wrote it down, wrote it down. He was single. He was a bachelor. Well, I said, that's great. I mean, that's wonderful. He said, Mr. Tracy, he said, I eventually stopped looking at the goals, and I put the workbook away, and I forgot about it. He said, about 10 years ago, and he said, about 2 weeks ago, I was going through some old things, and I found that spiral notebook, and I took it out, and I said, look at that notebook. It's a little bit tattered because he looked at it several times. I said, I wonder how I did. So he took out the spiral notebook, and he took a pen, and he went through the spiral notebook, and he said, yeah. He said, I achieved this one, and achieved number 2. My income went up and keeps going up. Number 3, I got a new car. Number 4, I got a home. Number 5, I met the girl of my dreams. Number 6, we got married. Number 7, we have 2 great kids. Number 8, I got a new boat. Number 9. He just kept ticking them off. He said, Brian, he said, I didn't achieve 90 or 100. I achieved all 101 goals that have been achieved in the last 12 years. 101. He said, not 99 or 100. This is what I ticked off every single goal. I hadn't looked at this list in 10 years. I ticked it off. Now, why do you think this happens? By the way, this is not unusual. I've heard stories like this before. Well, the reason it happens is when you write it down, you engage in what is called a psychoneuromotor activity, where you are writing it down, you see it, you verbalize it, and you physically move to write it down. And we'll talk about this tomorrow in greater detail. And so what you do is by doing that, you write it into your subconscious. You actually program it onto your hard drive, and it starts working 24 hours a day. Remember, the subconscious is working 24 hours a day, and it activates the law of attraction, it activates the law of correspondence, it changes your belief system, you trigger the cause and effect, everything starts to work, and just at the right time, kaboom, the goal is achieved, ka-chunk, and one took a year, and one took 5 years, and one took 6 years, and one took 30 days, but exactly the right time, ka-pop, it pops up, pop, pop, 101 in 12 years. Now, you can say, wow, that's really fortunate, but what if that would work for you? What if it works for everybody who does it? Would that be a good thing to think about? I have my good friend Dave Kekich, really interesting guy. He said, work on your goals as though you had a gun to your head. And so I came up with a variation on that. I said, work on your goals as though you're absolutely guaranteed of success. All you have to do is do it, and you will be successful. And you've got a gun to your head. Think about living your life like that you're absolutely guaranteed of success and you got a gun to your head. Think how much differently you would work and how much differently you would be committed and how much energy you'd put in. I mean, you wouldn't slack off and watch TV and read the paper if you were guaranteed. And I'm not talking about somebody else's goals. I'm talking about the things that you want to improve the quality of your life, and you're absolutely guaranteed. So we'll talk about that. But that's why how the subconscious works is what it does is it brings about everything that you want. Okay, let's take 5 minutes and stand up and stretch and come back. And we're getting right back on time. One quick point with regard to the conscious and the subconscious mind is if you can imagine that this is the conscious mind, it takes in information, and the information goes straight into the subconscious. And the subconscious mind has two major parts, but let's just say that the bottom part is inaccessible information. These are things that happened and took place at a pre-conscious level without you being aware of them, which you can never access. You can't go back to infancy and find out what they are. But my feeling is it's like concrete that's cracked. And the concrete that's cracked, you can actually fill the cracks, like with a sealant, by driving this command, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, into your subconscious mind. What it does is it affects and changes everything else, all of your other subconscious programming, but it also goes in and replaces and fills those cracks that in your psyche and subconscious going back from infancy, where it may have caused you not to like yourself. So the power of those words repeated, it's almost like an oil well where they drive down a hydraulic fluid that goes deeper and deeper and fracks and goes into it. So as you drive that command, I like myself, into your subconscious mind, not only does it change everything else in your programming, but it also goes back and it heals the old negative ideas that may be holding you back. So I just thought I would mention that for you. All right, now this next chapter, this next session is really, really important. We call this your taking charge of your life. And many people who've come to me all over the world and say, you changed my life, and I say it was because of this, wasn't it? And they said, yes, that's what changed my life. This is where we talk about that valve that may be reversed. And if the valve is reversed, what happens is you could be living actually a good life. You could be having a great life, but you could have, or an average life, but you could have just one concept, one idea that is wrong, and it could be holding you back from achieving your full potential. Remember, our great goal in life, my great goal, is to fulfill our full potential, to become everything that you are capable of becoming, and whatever you've accomplished up to now is merely a hint or a shadow of what you're truly capable of. Many years ago, there was a woman who grew up on a farm, and she didn't get past the 8th grade. Then she got married off to a local farmer's son, and she had children. And when she was a little girl, the age of 16, she got married about 16 or 17. She was a little girl. She liked to draw pictures. She liked to paint and draw pictures. And of course, that was tomfoolery. She was a farm girl. Farm girls married farm boys and raised farm kids and worked the farm. This is the beginning of the last century. And so she did. Some of you know who I'm talking about. So she went back to work. She'd always had that sort of fantasy in the back of her mind of doing little drawings. And she and her husband raised several children on a scrubble farm back in Pennsylvania. And she worked hard, and they worked hard her whole life. And then their children grew up, got married, and had children, and they had children. And finally, at the age of 65, 66, her hands were gnarled. She had arthritis. And her doctor told her, you can't work anymore. You can't work the farm anymore. You just can't be working 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And besides, you got a Social Security check. They'd never made any money. They'd scrabbled and mucked their whole lives. You got a Social Security check. Why don't you just back off? You know, you're older. You're worn out. In other words, you're not going to live that long, so you might as well enjoy what you have. So she said, well, to herself, what she'd always wanted to do in her life was to paint. So she got her first Social Security check, and she went into town, a small town, true story. She went to an art store, and she told the person that she wanted to paint. And he was very sympathetic to her, little old grandmother, farm woman. And he said, sure. He said, well, let me help you, and I'll get you some basic paints and some basic easels and things like that. So he got her set up, and she took this stuff back and set up her little easel behind the barn, and she began painting little pictures of the farm. These became known as primitive rural American landscapes. It's a whole new category of painting that was pioneered by Grandma Moses. She started painting in her late 60s and early 70s. When she was 99, they had a showing in New York at one of the great galleries of a set of original paintings from Grandma Moses. Her paintings at that time were selling for $350,000 a piece, and they were being snapped up as fast as she could paint them, 1 or 2 per week. Now here's the interesting thing, is that she had within her natural ability. She was never trained as a painter. She had a natural ability to put the landscapes on the canvas. And when she began painting, she earned more for one painting than she and her husband had earned in a lifetime of working that Scrabble farm. One painting. And they said that if she had started painting at the age of 16 with her natural ability to paint, she would be in the same category of Michelangelo and Bottolini and some of the great, and Rembrandt, and some of the great painters of the world. But at the very least, she would have been worth millions and millions of dollars. Been one of the wealthiest painters in the world because she had this natural ability. So why am I telling you that story? Well, it's the same story about the goat farmer who was on welfare. Sometimes deep within yourself, you have the ability to do something quite extraordinary. Emmett Fox called this your heart's desire. And he said, your heart's desire calls to you. But what stops us is mental blocks, almost like gates or grates that block us from going after our heart's desire. And so let's see if we can just get rid of those blocks so that there's nothing in front of you. It's like a football player that catches a fumble and there's no players in front of them. It's a goal to go. And they just runs in an open field. So, taking charge of your life. One of the most important decisions you ever make is to move from child to adult. We're conditioned from infancy to see ourselves as children. With children, there's other people in charge of our life. They make our decisions for us. They tell us what to eat and when to eat. They tell us when to go and when to come. they buy our clothes for us, they take care of us, and so on. So we are conditioned, if we're not careful, we're conditioned to see that we are provided for by people other than ourselves, and that we're told to go here and come there, and go there and do this. We're conditioned to feel that we're supposed to be told what to do by big people, by other people. Most people never get over this. They never make the move from child to adult. And when they grow up, they think that somebody else should be taking care of them, a boss, an employer. Soon, and the worst of all is a government. The government should be providing for me. And I don't care how they provide. It doesn't matter what they do, but I think they should provide for me and take care of me. And so we remain children all our lives. Steinbeck wrote a story many years ago, which I was required to study in high school. And it talks about a young man who now has to make a big decision. And she says, her friend says, but he's only a boy. She said, a boy becomes a man when a man is needed. I've seen boys 40 years old because a man was never needed. And it's the same thing. A woman becomes a woman when a woman is needed. And there are women 40 and 50 years old because a woman was never needed. They would continually look for someone else. So we say the slogan of the totally responsible person is, if it's to be, it's up to me. If it's to be, it's up to me. We do not look to other people as the solutions for our problems. And what we do is, Henry Ford said, never complain, never explain. In other words, if you're not happy with something, change it, but don't complain about it. Complaining is a sign of weakness, but it's also a sign of victimhood. A person who complains is saying, basically, I'm a victim. I'm a victim. Somebody was talking to the actor who plays Aaron in 24. I had lunch with him on Tuesday with Nathaniel Brandon. He was saying, and he's become a speaker as well, he's saying you can always tell when people have their lives out of control when they talk about what things that are being done to them. He did this to me. She did that to me. They did this to me. The company did this to me. He said they're always saying, I'm a victim. I'm weak. I'm little. I'm ineffectual. I'm a child. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. Please feel sorry for me. And what this does is that it guts your self-esteem. It just takes away all your motivation and all your self-confidence. So even the choice of words can be very bad. So we say there is a deep valley between maturity and immaturity called the valley of excuses. And this is one of my contributions. And we say that in life, you come to this valley, this canyon, and on this side is childhood and immaturity. And on this side is adulthood and maturity. And this is the canyon. And you come to this point, and you have to make a decision to take the big leap. But what most people do is they take the leap tentatively, and they try to cross the canyon of excuses. And this is the canyon of excuses. They try to cross it in 2 jumps. And they end up in the valley of excuses. And the valley of excuses is one of the greatest obstacles to success in adult life. We make excuses. I often say that the 80% of the population goes to someday I'll. Whenever they think of a change they want to make in their life, they go to someday I'll. Someday I'll do that, and someday I'll write that down, and someday I'll buy that book, and someday I'll upgrade my skills and lose weight and get out of debt, and someday I'll change my lousy relationship, and so on. And then they end up in the valley of excuses. So your job as a fully functioning adult, when you reach here, is to make a leap to the other side. And once you made a leap to the other side, there's no going back. And this leap of accepting total responsibility for your life is scary. And that's why most people don't do it. It's also exhilarating because it liberates you to say, I am in charge of my own life. It's me that's in charge. So your job is to leap over the valley of excuses, accept total responsibility for your life, and never go back. And never go back. So we say that, we say, yeah, I hope I'm not getting ahead of myself. The disease excusitis, which is an inflammation of the excuse-making gland, is invariably fatal to success. The reason that people don't succeed is because they have excuses. You cannot imagine a leader weeping, whining, crying, and making excuses. As Mark Twain said, there are 1,000 excuses for failure, but never a good reason. So one of the things we do is there's no more excuses. Either do it or don't do it. Get in or get out, but I don't make excuses. And so we say number 6, acceptance of responsibility is not optional, it is mandatory. I mentioned this before, but I cannot be too emphatic, is that you can only give away control. You cannot give away responsibility. You remain responsible for yourself for your entire adult life. You can give away control by trying to make someone else responsible for your life, and you do, and then you wait for them to tell you what to do or what not to do, or to give you a raise, or to promote you, or demote you, or hire you, or something else. Or you can accept responsibility. And accepting responsibility is mandatory. You cannot go any further. You are literally blocked in place, almost like there is a wall in front of you, until you accept responsibility and make the leap and never make another excuse. So we say that the word responsibility can be broken down into two words, response and ability. It is your ability to respond. The challenge response theory of history is a fascinating part of history that I came across in studying the work of Gunnar Myrdal, who got an Academy Award for his work. He said that every civilization in history, I'm going to put this down, I don't want to push the button. All right. He said every civilization in history began with a small tribe sometimes as small as 3. The Mongol Empire, which was the largest empire in the history of man on earth, which extended from the Sea of Japan all the way to the Danube in Europe and all the way through the Middle East and all of China and half of India, started off with 3 people. Genghis Khan, whose name was Temujin, his brother, his mother Bortai, and his brother. Doesn't escape me. Anyway, there are 3 of them. The tribe had been wiped out. They ran into the Gobi Desert and hid. And what Temujin did was he sought out the tribe of his, and so what happens is every single tribe that became an empire started off with a major challenge to which they had to respond effectively. Well, this was a major challenge. The tribe was wiped out. So he responded by joining his uncle's tribe and becoming a valued member of his uncle's tribe. And if you respond effectively, the empire would grow. If then that tribe was attacked by other tribes, if they responded effectively and won, then the empire would grow again. As it grew, it would keep bumping up against other tribes and other kingdoms, and there would be conflict. And if they reorganized and responded effectively, they would grow again. And this would continue, and it would continue until they no longer were able to or had the will to respond. All of the last 26 civilizations in history, 25 collapsed from within. The 26th great civilization is the American civilization. And they all collapsed from within because they became weak. They collapsed like Rome collapsed on bread and circuses, welfare for the masses, buying them off with massive taxation on the ones that were productive, until finally they gutted themselves from within and the barbarians came from outside and just took over the city, and the Roman Empire disappeared. Well, in our life, every time we respond effectively to a challenge, we grow and become stronger. And we become more tenacious, and we become more confident, and we become more powerful. So the only thing that we can be sure of is challenges. Your life will be one series of challenges after another. They will never stop. They will come like the waves from the ocean, problem after problem after problem. The only question is, can we respond effectively? And if you do, you continue to grow. As soon as we stop responding effectively to the challenges of outside life, what happens is we begin to implode. So whenever you have a challenge, remember, you just say, well, here we go again. This is what I do. I respond effectively to challenges. And the wonderful thing is, and I learned this in the metaphysics, make the decision that no matter what happens, you will respond effectively. And pre-program yourself, so no matter what happens, I respond effectively. No matter what problem I have in life, I take charge of it, I accept responsibility, and I respond effectively. If you make that decision in advance, then when the problem occurs, it's almost like they push the automatic button, you're already set, and you respond effectively. You don't even have to think, what should I do in this situation? You just respond in an effective way. You don't get upset or angry or weep or cry or lash out at other people. What you do is you say, it's a problem, so we respond effectively. What do we do from here? Very, very important. This attitude is the attitude of the leader. So civilizations grow and decline to the degree to which they meet challenges and respond effectively, just as individuals grow or decline to the degree to which they meet challenges effectively. So the 3 areas of life where responsibility is essential. First of all is the political area. The more you vote for politicians to do things for you, the more you give politicians control. And unfortunately, every civilization in history has elected politicians who promise to rob from Peter to give the money to Paul. And as they say, when someone promises to rob Peter and pay Paul, they will always have the support of Paul. Okay? And basically, this is modern politics in the Western world today. Japan has almost collapsed on this. Most of the other Western countries are in a state of bankruptcy or collapse because the politicians are too weak not to give people what they want, which is free money. So whenever you vote for somebody who promises to give free money to other groups, remember, they're going to get it from you. And what happens is the less money you have, the less power you have over your own life. The second area has to do with the economic world. The economic world is where you become an economic adult. As an economic adult, you take charge of your own career. You make your own career decisions. You don't hope that somebody else will give you a job and a place to sit and tell you what to do and what not to do. You see yourself as self-employed. You see yourself as in charge of your own personal career. I write on this on a regular basis. I do books and articles on it because there's so many people going through unemployment. And what they do is they go hat in hand and they say, please hire me. Please give me a place out of the cold. Please give me money for something, please. And instead of taking charge of their lives, they look upon someone out there who's supposed to be responsible for them. And this just makes you a child. And you switch the childhood focus from your parents to your boss, and your boss becomes your new parent. And the third area is health and wellness. As many of us do not take good care of our bodies, we expect the doctor to take care of us once we become sick. If there were no doctors, or if you were in a place where doctors were very hard to come by, you'd probably take much better care of your health. But responsibility, taking charge of your life, is very important because there's a direct link between responsibility and self-esteem. Is the more responsibility you accept, the more you like yourself and the more powerful you feel. The more you blame your problems on other people, the weaker you feel and the less you like yourself. The two go down in tandem. High responsibility, high self-esteem. Low responsibility, low self-esteem. Low self-confidence, low potential for realizing all that's possible for you. So we say the important key is this. You are always free to choose the quality of your emotional life. You're always free to choose the quality of your emotional life, your physical life, and your financial life. Now this is quite a remarkable thing. It's your choice. What Barbara and I realized this many years ago. Our daughter, Christina, confronted us and said, you know, she was under 13, 14, attractive, blonde, beautiful girl. Fathers have a sort of a soft spot for their daughters because fathers spend the first half of their lifetimes trying to get other people's daughters to do what we try to talk our daughters out of doing for the second half of our lifetime. And so we know that boys are no damn good. And so we're trying to protect Christina. And she sat us down and she lectured to us like we had been brought home from the home and we were just being lectured to as not very intelligent adults. She said, look, you can't watch me all the time. So we're setting up all these boundaries and markers and do this and you must call me here and everything else. You can't watch me all the time. I'm going to make my own decisions. You just have to trust that you've raised me well enough so that I'll make good decisions for myself. And Barbara and I realized that she was right. And we said, okay, from now on, you make your own decisions, and whatever decisions you make, we'll support you 100%. And that's just become the mantra in our family. Whatever decisions you make, we support you 100%. And I have a little joke with my children. I say, I've never forced you to do anything, and I've never forbidden you to do anything. And they have to agree. I've never forced you, you must do this, and I've never forbidden you, you cannot do that. Unless, of course, they want to spend enormous amounts of my money, in which case we just have to have a longer conversation. But I've always encouraged them to make their own decisions. And I've not always agreed with their decisions, but I always back them 100%. And most of the decisions that they've made have turned out to be very good decisions. It's amazing how good their decisions are when they are responsible for making their own decisions. And wouldn't you agree with that? Would you agree? Okay. My son is here, and he told me not to call him out, so I won't mention. So I won't mention that he's here. I won't mention that my son is here. He could be sitting right next to you. You never know which one he is in this room. All right, so you're always free to choose the quality. You're always free to make your own decisions, and that's important. You mean I can make my own decisions? Yes, you can make your own decisions. When I was growing up, I was always told, do this, do that, do this, do that, and I hated it. And so in my family, everybody's encouraged to make their own decisions, and my deal is whatever decision you make, I back you 100%. And there's nothing more wonderful, I think, than for people to know that the important people in their lives back them 100%. Does that mean that you always make good decisions? No, but you always know that you're backed 100%. And you know that if it's your decision, it doesn't work out, they'll change that decision very fast. They will reverse themselves very quickly if it's their decision. So here's eliminating negative emotions. Now this graph, I've actually managed to get it mounted in PowerPoint so I don't have to write it out. Negative emotions, we say that this is responsible and this is irresponsible. And everybody is on a graph somewhere in between these two. You're either irresponsible is you see everybody else is responsible for your life, or you're totally responsible. The top 10% of people are totally responsible. These are leaders. And you can be a leader without followers. You can be a leader without a staff. A leader is a person who behaves like a leader, and a leader is someone who takes total responsibility. Now, the more responsibility you accept, the more control you feel you have over your life. Not only physical and financial control, but emotional control. You feel you are in charge, and the more control you have, the more freedom you have. If you were to ask people why they want to start their own business, why they want a lot of money, if you ask them over and over again, the final question they will always give you is to be free. We all want to be free. We love freedom. No human being has ever said, I have too much freedom, please take some away from me. There are politicians who believe that members of the voting public have too much freedom, and they believe that they have been elected to take that freedom away by taxes and regulations. But there's never a person who says, I have too much freedom, please tax away my income, please regulate me and constrain my behavior so that I do things that you think are good for me. When you put it like that, nobody would ever say that. And yet this is one of the great dilemmas of the day. So the more responsibility you accept, the more control you have, the greater freedom you have. And the greater freedom you have, the more positive emotions you have. So there's a direct one-to-one link between responsibility and control, freedom, and positive emotions. At the bottom end of the spectrum, irresponsibility leads to a lack of control, feeling out of control, a lack of freedom, you feel controlled by other people, and negative emotions. Now, I spent 4,000 hours and several years of my young life studying the concept of negative emotions. This is some of the most important work that has ever been done based on people all over the world, because the only thing that stands between you and a fabulous life are negative emotions, fear and negative emotions. If you have no negative emotions, since nature abhors a vacuum, what will your mind be filled with? If you have no negative emotions, the mind does not remain empty. What does it fill with? It fills with positive emotions of love and happiness and joy and exhilaration. So the great business of life is to eliminate negative emotions. And eliminating negative emotions is the key to unlocking the power of your subconscious and superconscious minds. So how do we do that? Well, I figured out how. And it works like a dam. So we say here, the negative emotion tree. Now this is my creation. The negative emotion tree is something that I designed. And in the negative emotion tree, what you have, let's say this is the negative emotion tree that you have here, and then you have the trunk, and then you have the root system. And here's the ground, all right? Now in the negative emotion tree grow the fruits of the negative emotion tree, which are anger and fear and doubt, and then there is jealousy, the green-eyed monster, then there's envy. Do you know that envy is the primary motivating force of most modern politics? Is those who have less envy those who have more, and vote for people who promise to take it away from them. And then her twin sister, resentment. Envy and resentment go around together, arm in arm. And then there's self-doubt, and there's all kinds of fears, and there's about 54 negative emotions. And these are sort of like trees. These are like fruits in the trees. So how do you get rid of the negative emotions? Well, we say the first thing you do is you starve the roots. You starve the root system, because if you starve the root system, the tree will shrivel up and die. So there are two essential factors that keep negative emotions, that create them and keep them alive. The first is justification. And justification is where you feel that you are justified in your negative emotion. As a matter of fact, justification is where you say, hey, I'm entitled to this negative emotion. Because of what this person did and what this person said and what this person said to me, I'm justified. And what we do is we talk around, as we drive around, we have a continual, ongoing conversation thinking of all the reasons why we're justified in being angry, upset, and negative about this person. That's all we think about is, I'm entitled to this emotion. The other factor that creates negative emotion, is identification. Identification is taking things personally. If we can't take things personally, then what happens is we cannot attach any negativity to it. If it's not personal, for example, if someone robbed a store in Bangladesh 2 weeks ago and took all the money of the poor people, we don't suffer any negative emotion from that because we don't take it personally. We look at unfortunate experiences that happen in the world, earthquakes and tsunamis and so on, but we don't get emotional about them because they don't really affect us. How many people went to bed tossing and turning and weeping over the Japanese tsunami and the shutdown of the nuclear reactor? Well, we read it in the paper and then we just watch something else on TV, go to the comic section or sports. I mean, to us, there's no emotion attached to it because we don't take it personally. And so if you stop justifying and creating reasons why you're entitled to the negative emotion, and you stop identifying, your negative emotions begin to shrivel and die. Now, how do we starve the fruits of the negative emotion tree? We become non-judgmental. If you can become non-judgmental, in which case you simply refuse to judge. You simply refuse, like they say, that prejudice is prejudgment, and so what you do is you don't judge. In the Bible, which is a book that gives a lot of ideas on peace of mind, it says, judge not that you be not judged, for with whatever judgment you mete out, you shall be judged withal. In other words, if you judge other people, they'll judge you. So what you do is you judge not. And if you don't take a side or an opinion, you have no emotion attached to it. It disconnects the emotion completely. So when you hear something, don't get upset or angry about it, just don't judge. You say, well, let's get all the facts. I have worked with great leaders whose companies face tremendous crises, and in every case, they go as calm as water. They're calm and they're placid and they don't judge. They say, well, let's see exactly what happened. And so they ask questions. I've written a book on this called, it was going to be called Crunch Time. They called it Crunch Point. But what it basically says is it taught people stop the clock, stay calm, get the facts. And they don't judge, they don't get angry, they don't get upset, they don't get worked up, they stay calm. And the measure of how successful you are as a person is how calm you can remain when there's turbulence in the world around you, as opposed to getting caught up immediately. The second thing is identifying, don't take things personally. And so we say here, we become non-judgmental, and second of all, we disidentify, we practice detachment. The entire Buddhist religion, by the way, which affects about 600 million people in the world today, and which has some beautiful precepts, is detachment. It's non-attachment. It's only when we become attached to an outcome, when we become attached to money, when we become attached to a relationship, when we become attached to a job, it's only when we become attached and become emotionally caught up in it that it can cause us any unhappiness or anger or resentment or negativity. That's why it's so important to stand back and detach emotionally so you don't get upset about it. And you say, well, it's just like when you think of things that happened in the past, you say, well, things just happen. Simple as that. Things just happen. And we say that, things just happen. Well, this happened, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, things happen. You know the old one? Rhymes with spit happens? Yeah, stuff happens. And if you can say that, then you remain calm. Now, here's an interesting point, is calmness is what leads to peace of mind. Calmness is also coextensive with self-esteem, self-confidence, effectiveness, creativity. When you become emotionally involved in anything, all of your creative, your higher mental powers shut down and you revert to fight or flight, your limbic system, fear, anger, and so on. As long as you become emotionally involved, you cannot think clearly. There's a line from Francis Bacon, it says, where it maketh a man who can in no way be true to his own ends. In other words, we get so excited. So the key is to stay calm. That's why they say, take a deep breath, count to 10, stay calm, detach, get the facts, don't get upset, don't get involved. Well, this is how we starve the negative emotions. You'll find that people who have no negative emotions are much calmer and much more positive than others. However, there's something even better. And that is the key to ridding yourself of negative emotions is to cut down the trunk of the tree. Is to cut down the trunk of the tree, which is blame. And blame lies at the root of 99% of negative emotions. Is we find that if this is blame, this blame, we cut down the tree. And it's almost as if these negative emotions were lights in a Christmas tree, and the Christmas tree is plugged into the wall. Is if you unplug a Christmas tree light from the wall, what happens to all the lights simultaneously? They all go out. And when you stop blaming, all your negative emotions stop. And for as long as you're not blaming, your negative emotions stop. You have no negative emotions. And at that moment, your mind starts to fill with positive emotions. So how do we stop blaming? Well, this is so simple and so powerful that is literally, for me, it's life-changing. I still have to use it every day, because is your life full of difficult people and reversals and unexpected setbacks? Of course it is. So the only question is not what happens. You can't change that. You can change how you respond, your response ability. So nothing and no one makes you angry. There is no anger or negativity in a situation by itself. It has no emotion attached to it any more than a rock does. Is all emotion in a situation is emotion that you put into that situation by the way you interpret it to yourself, by the way you justify or identify or blame. So eliminating blame and negative emotions, eliminate them by using the law of substitution. And the law of substitution says replace the blame thought with this affirmation, I am responsible. Now this seems so simple, and yet I still think about it and use it every day, is that it's impossible to blame. It's impossible to accept responsibility and to blame at the same time. The one cancels the other. So it's impossible to be negative and accept responsibility. It's impossible to not feel empowered when you accept responsibility. So say these words. Say, I am responsible.
I am responsible.
Now I want you to think of any negative experience in your life that still causes you any anger, upset, unhappiness, and just say instead, I am responsible. Just think to yourself, I am responsible, I am responsible. Now, what I learned, which had such an impact on my mind, is that we rationalize. By rationalize, is we use our mind to think of all kinds of reasons why we are entitled to our negative emotions. So what we do instead is we use our mind to cancel negative emotions and to think of reasons why we should not have them. And instead of using our minds against ourselves, but by committing emotional hara-kiri, where you slice your gut and plunge the knife into yourself and make yourself unhappy and miserable, what you do is you use your mind to eliminate the expression of negative emotions. So if you think of any negative experience in your life, you just simply say, wait a minute, I am responsible. I am responsible. And then you think, in what way am I responsible? In what ways am I responsible? If you're dealing with a negative situation that you've had for a long time, the first time I recommend this to you, it's very hard, because you have fallen in love with your negativity. And you don't want me talking it out of you. Come, give me that. Because people don't want to give up their negativity. And so you're going to have to play with this idea and say, wait a minute, let's say you had a lousy relationship and the person treated you very, very badly and it ended with awful divorce and emotional stress and so on and so forth. What you do is you say, wait a minute, I'm responsible. I am responsible. Now, how and in what way could I possibly be responsible? Well, I got myself into the situation. I married the person. When it was clear it wasn't going to work out, I stayed in the situation. In fact, even before I got married, I knew that this was not a good idea, but I did it anyway because my mother expected me to. And we'd already sent out the invitations. And I could have gotten out. 38% of people who get married say that if it were not for all the people coming, they'd already changed their mind. 38% of people realize they're not going to, they would have changed their mind. I had this great experience. I was taking a taxi to the airport, and and I said to the taxi driver, I said, please take me to the airport. He said, where are you off to? I said, well, I'm off to Vancouver. He said, well, it's nice to pick up somebody who knows where they're going. And I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, I had a fare last night. It was really interesting. He said, I was called by this woman to come to this home and pick her up, but I was supposed to go around in the alley in the back and wait, and the passenger would come out. So I drove, I found the address, and there were cars up and down both sides of the street, the lights on, a big party going on. It was in the summer. And people all over the place having a great time. And so I said, well, he went around the block and he stopped in the alley, and he waited. About 5 or 10 minutes later, this woman came running out, threw her suitcases into the car and said, take me to the airport. And he said, great. And he started off the airport, and he said, where are you off to? She said, first plane out in whatever direction. She said, I don't care. And he said, really? He said, I've never had that before. He said, well, you see all those people back there? She said, that was my wedding reception. I just got married this afternoon, and I knew I shouldn't be marrying that guy. And I got home, and I sat undressing, changing her clothes after the wedding. She sat in my room and said, my God, what a mistake I've made. This is really stupid. She said, I'm getting out of here before it goes any further. She said, take me to the airport. I'm taking the first plane out in either direction. And she did. And 38% of people who get married think that way. This is by the marriage counselors, by the way, who counsel couples. They find about 38% on average, based on a study of 100,000 counseled couples, decide not to get married because they're caught up. My point is this, is if you had a bad business deal, who got you into it? Did you go into it yourself? Did you make the decision yourself? Did you make the choice? Did you have some misgivings but you kept on going, or did you not find out enough information? In other words, use this brilliant mind of yours to think of all the reasons why you are responsible. And as you do that, you'll find the negativity begins to fall away. And you stop being negative about the other person. You say, hey, I'm an adult. I made some bad decisions. That was really dumb. And then start telling yourself, that was a dumb decision. I was really stupid to do that. If I had done more research or I thought about it, I listened to my intuition and so on. Now you're using your mind to keep yourself calm and positive and clear. And you keep saying, hey, I am responsible. I am responsible. And as you say, I am responsible, you jerk the plug on the negative emotion tree and all your negative emotions stop.